Okay, so imagine this. You're going about your day, right? And bam, life throws one of its classic curveballs.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know what I'm talking about. That promotion you totally deserved but didn't get, or your car deciding to just give up the ghost at the worst possible moment.
I feel like everyone listening right now is nodding along. Those moments, they hit hard.
They really do. And it's easy to just let those setbacks, feel like defeats. But what if I told you that there's a way to actually flip that script? And I'm not talking about just thinking positive thoughts here.
No magic spells or wishful thinking.
No, this is something way more powerful. It's something you already possess your perception.
I love that we're starting here. Perception, it's such a fundamental aspect of our experience, but it's often overlooked.
It's so basic that we kind of take it for granted. Yeah, obviously how we see things matters, but how much control do we really have over it? And that's what we're diving into today. How to use perception as a tool to actually shape our reality.
It's a tool that can work for you or against you.
Exactly. So in this deep dive, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of how to consciously use this tool of perception to navigate all those inevitable challenges life throws our way.
Because let's be real, those challenges, they're coming whether we like it or not.
Oh, absolutely. So buckle up because we're about to get into some pretty powerful stuff. But first things first, I think it's important to lay down a foundation. And we're going to do that with something called the Hermetic Law of Polarity.
Ooh, I love this one. This is a concept that really gets you thinking.
It might sound a little esoteric at first, but trust me, it's actually pretty simple. Think of it like a coin, right? Every coin has two sides.
Heads, tails, the classic duality.
Exactly. But it's not just about physical objects. This law applies to, well, pretty much everything. Hot and cold, they're both just different degrees of temperature. Light and dark, different degrees of light. Even the most controversial of all, pineapple on pizza.
Oh, you had to go there.
Whether you love it or hate it, it's still existing on that spectrum of pizza toppings.
I mean, you're not wrong. It all comes down to personal preference, how you perceive that particular topping.
And that's exactly the point. These seemingly opposite things are not actually separate. They exist on a sliding scale. Think of it like the volume knob on your stereo. You can crank it up, you can turn it down, but it's all still sound.
It's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it helps us to understand that what we often see as separate and distinct might actually be connected in ways we don't always realize.
So let's apply this to something a little more, shall we say, life-altering. Success and failure. We tend to see them as polar opposites.
Right, like complete ends of the spectrum.
But what if they're actually just different points on that same spectrum of being in the game? If you're failing, you're at least trying, you're learning, you're moving forward.
You're engaged in the process rather than sitting on the sidelines.
Bingo. And here's where things get really interesting. Because these opposites are just different points on the same scale, you can actually slide between them.
This is where our perception comes in. How we choose to see things, where we focus our attention, that determines our experience.
Exactly. Feeling totally broke. Well, that's just wealth turned way down low. Having a day where you feel like a complete mess? Maybe that's just brilliance taking a well-deserved nap.
Or, as some spiritual traditions suggest, it could be a sign that you're about to experience a major breakthrough, a period of chaos before a major shift.
It's all about perspective, and that's where our power lies in choosing how we perceive these things.
So the law of polarity, it provides us with a framework for understanding that these seeming opposites, they're actually intertwined. And it's up to us to decide how we navigate that spectrum.
So let's talk about perception itself. Think of it like those cheap sunglasses you pick up at a gas station. You know, the ones with the slight and walkie lenses that make everything look a little different?
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you mean. They kind of cast a weird hue over everything.
Exactly. Well, your perception does the same thing, often without you even realizing it. It's like wearing a pair of those sunglasses all the time, but you've forgotten they're even there.
So we're walking around with these invisible filters, shaping how we experience the world. That's a powerful thought.
It really is. And to illustrate this, let's paint a little picture. Imagine you're at work, right? And your coworker, let's call him Jerry, accidentally spills a giant cup of coffee.
Oh no, not on the carpet.
Worse, all over the pristine white desk of your very important boss.
Okay, that's not good.
Now, one person might see this and immediately think, oh, poor Jerry, he is so fired. But someone else might see it and think, wow, Jerry's really going to stand out in the boss's memory now.
So, same event, two completely different interpretations.
Exactly. What changed? Not the coffee, not the desk, just the perception.
It highlights how much our individual perspectives influence our experience of events. We're not just passive observers. We're actively creating meaning.
And I've seen this play out in my own life so many times. Back when I was really struggling financially, I remember constantly checking my bank balance and feeling this wave of despair, like, here we go again, things are terrible.
That feeling of lack, it can be all-consuming.
It really can.
Hmm.
But then I started to experiment with my perception. I thought, what if this isn't the end of the story? What if being broke is just a setup for something amazing?
A plot twist waiting to happen.
Yeah, like maybe all these no's I'm getting are actually just guiding me to a yes that's even better. And, things started to change. It wasn't overnight, but opportunities started showing up.
Mm.
And that empty bank account, it didn't feel like a symbol of failure anymore. It felt like, well, a blank
A
canvas.
chance to create something new.
Exactly. And that shift, it all came down to changing how I was seeing things. And that's the key takeaway here. Perception is a choice. We might not always feel like we have control over it, especially when we're going through tough times, but we do. We can choose to see the world through a lens of fear and scarcity, or we can choose a lens of possibility and abundance.
It's about recognizing that we have that agency, that power to choose. And it's not always easy, especially when we're so used to seeing things a certain way.
It takes practice, that's for sure. But the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. And that's where we move from being what I like to call reality robots to being conscious creators.
Reality robots. I love that. It perfectly describes that feeling of just passively accepting whatever reality throws our way.
Right. Just going through the motions, reacting to everything instead of actively shaping our experience. But the moment we wake up and say, wait, I have a choice here, that's when things start to shift.
So how do we move from reality robot to conscious creator? Where do we even begin to unpack this idea of actively shaping our reality?
Let's get a little more specific here. Your reality, it's not some static thing that's happening to you. It's actually a reflection of your subconscious beliefs, those deep-seated ideas about yourself and the world that are often running on autopilot.
Those beliefs, they're like the operating system that's running in the background, influencing everything we do.
Exactly. And your perception acts as a filter. What you perceive in the outside world reinforces those beliefs, which then shapes what you perceive. It's like this continuous feedback loop, a reality generator that's constantly humming along.
It's a powerful image, this constant interplay between our internal beliefs and our external experiences. And perception is the bridge between the two.
It really is. So let's go back to that money example. If you have a deep-seated belief that money is scarce and hard to come by, your perception is going to be hyper-focused on every bill, every expense, every time you have to say no to something you want. And that just strengthens that belief of scarcity.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We see what we expect to see, and that reinforces our original belief.
Right. But if you consciously shift your perception and start looking for evidence of abundance, every bit of income, every unexpected financial win, every time you're able to pay your bills on time, then that loop starts to spin in a different direction. Finding a $5 bill in your pocket isn't just a random occurrence. It's a sign that abundance is flowing into your life.
It's about training our minds to look for the evidence that supports the reality we want to create, rather than the one we're afraid of.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the law of polarity. Our perception determines which side of that coin we experience most vividly. The underlying energy might be neutral, but it's our interpretation that shapes our experience.
So it's not about denying the existence of challenges, but about changing our relationship with them.
You got it. We're not trying to pretend that difficulties don't exist. It's about choosing to see them through a different lens.
And I think that's a really important point to emphasize. It's not about toxic positivity or ignoring the negative. It's about acknowledging those challenges and then consciously choosing a more empowering perspective.
Right. So here's something that might sound a little radical at first. Life, in and of itself, is inherently meaningless.
Whoa, okay, let's unpack that.
Hold on. I know it sounds a bit out there. I'm not saying that life is pointless or that nothing matters. What I mean is that events, circumstances, they don't come with pre-assigned labels of good or bad, win or loss. They're neutral until we decide what they mean.
This idea of inherent neutrality is really powerful because it takes away the power that we often give to external events.
Right. It puts the power back in our own hands.
We become the authors of our own experience rather than the characters in someone else's story.
I love that. So think about it. You lose your job. Is that inherently a disaster? Maybe. Or maybe it's the push you needed to finally start that business you've always dreamed of. You make a mistake, you mess something up. Is that inherently a failure? Or is it a valuable learning experience?
It all comes down to the meaning we assign to it.
Exactly. There's no cosmic rulebook that says this event equals failure, that event equals success. The meaning comes from us. And that's an incredibly liberating realization.
It is, because once we realize that we have the power to assign meaning, we can choose interpretations that empower us rather than limit us.
I used to be the queen of catastrophizing. Stub my toe, the universe must hate me, miss a deadline. I'm a total failure, my life is over. But then I started to challenge those thoughts. Like, why am I letting these small, random things dictate my entire emotional state?
We can get so caught up in the drama of it all.
Oh, absolutely. But then I started to experiment with flipping the script.
Yeah.
Car trouble. Great. Now I have some unexpected time to listen to my favorite podcast. A business deal falls through. Maybe it wasn't the right fit. Maybe something even better is on the horizon.
It's like you're performing a little bit of mental alchemy, turning those perceived negatives into something positive.
Exactly. It's not about ignoring the initial frustration or inconvenience. It's about consciously choosing a more empowering interpretation.
So how do we actually do that? How do we make that shift from reacting to life's curveballs to actively creating our experience?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And it all comes down to this. Are you letting external events dictate your internal state? Or are you taking charge of your internal state regardless of what's happening externally?
That's the difference between reacting and creating. And perception is the key that unlocks that door.
It really is. So instead of just automatically accepting those negative thoughts that pop up, like, "Ooh, another bill I can't pay," try consciously choosing a different narrative. Like, this is just a temporary bump in the road. I'm going to figure this out.
It's about shifting from feeling like a victim of circumstance to feeling like the architect of our own reality.
I've seen this make such a huge difference in my own life, especially when it comes to my business. There was a time when things had plateaued, revenue was stagnant, and I was starting to freak out.
That feeling of being stuck, it can be really disheartening.
Oh, for sure. But I decided to change my perspective. Every no I got from a potential client became not yet. Every slow week became the calm before the storm. And you know what? Eventually, that storm did come in the form of new opportunities, new clients, a surge in income.
It's amazing how our expectations can shape our reality.
It's wild, right? And it wasn't just me visualizing things and hoping they'd magically appear. It was about shifting my perception of the present moment, which then opened up possibilities I hadn't even considered before.
It's like changing the frequency you're tuned to, and suddenly you start picking up different signals.
I love that analogy. There's a story I often think about a friend of mine. Let's call him Mike. He was running his own business, and he was consistently making around $1,500 a day,
Yeah.
which sounds pretty good, right?
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
But he was working himself to the bone to get there, and he was starting to feel like he was stuck in this endless cycle of hustle. So we were talking about it one day, and I suggested that he try shifting his perception. Instead of seeing that daily grind as evidence that he was stuck at that level, what if he started seeing it as proof that he was on the verge of a major breakthrough?
So changing the meaning he was assigning to that hard work.
Exactly. And the crazy thing is, within about 5 weeks, his daily income had doubled. He was making $3,000 a day, same business, same amount of effort, just a completely different mental lens. And that's the kind of power I'm talking about.
It's a testament to the power of our beliefs and how they shape our reality. Mike didn't suddenly start working twice as hard. He just changed his perception of the work he was already doing.
So if you take away one thing from our conversation today, let it be this. No matter what's happening in your life, no matter how difficult things might seem, choose to see every step, every event as a win in some way.
Even the setbacks and the challenges.
Especially the setbacks and the challenges. You trip and almost fall. Great, that's your body practicing its balance and coordination. You burn dinner, fantastic. You're a culinary trailblazer, exploring new frontiers of flavor. Life throws you a curveball. Perfect, time to hit a home run. It's not about denying reality, it's about training your brain to look for the good, the lesson, the opportunity embedded in every situation.
It's about becoming an active participant in the meaning-making process.
I do this all the time now. Miss my train. Awesome, I have a few extra minutes to plan world domination. Someone cuts me off in traffic. Thank you for reminding me to breathe and stay present. It's like you're gaslighting yourself in a good way.
I love that. Gaslighting yourself, but make it positive.
Exactly. You're deliberately choosing to interpret events in a way that empowers you. And here's the cool thing. The world around you starts to respond to that shift. Opportunities you never saw before start showing up. You move from just surviving to thriving.
It's like you're changing the energetic frequency you're emitting, and that attracts different experiences.
And there's a quote from Neville Goddard that I think sums this up beautifully. He said, "The reward is to the one who enjoys a deep conviction that all is well."
That's a powerful statement.
It really is. If you can cultivate that unshakable belief that everything is working out for you, even when things are tough, you're tapping into an incredible source of power.
It's about having faith in the process, even when we don't fully understand it.
Exactly. And that's what we're talking about here, cultivating that inner knowing that everything is ultimately okay.
So to bring it all together,
Mm-hmm.
we have the power to choose our perception.
We have the understanding that seemingly opposite forces are actually connected.
And we have the ability to shape our reality through our beliefs and interpretations.
We don't need any fancy tools or magic formulas. We have everything we need within us right now.
It's just a matter of remembering that power and choosing to use it.
I used to think all this stuff was just, woo-woo nonsense. But honestly, this is what's changed my life. I went from struggling to make ends meet to building a business and a life that I love. And it all started with learning how to consciously direct my perception. And I know if I can do it, anyone can.
It's inspiring to hear your personal journey. It shows that these principles can have a real and tangible impact.
And for anyone listening who's feeling stuck, especially those of you who are entrepreneurs trying to break through to that next level, sometimes the key isn't about working harder. It's about shifting your perspective.
It's about working smarter, not harder.
So remember, keep flipping those coins. Choose to see those setbacks as setups for something greater. Every stumble is a step forward. Life is a game. And you, my friend, you are the one holding the controller.
Time to level up.
Now go out there and play.